Hey guys, it's Emma Vigling with TYT Politics. The Jeff Sessions confirmation hearings are currently in progress, and I wanted to give you some thoughts. But I saw in a Vox article that they described Jeff Sessions as the combination of populist immigration hawkery and the tough-on-crime rhetoric that defined much of Trump's successful presidential campaign. And it was Sessions' hallmark back when Trump was still a Democrat, meaning that Jeff Sessions, it's the oldest trick in the book for him. He's been doing this for years, this racist rhetoric. He was the first senator to endorse Trump, and since 1997, he's been the senator from Alabama. Before that, he was the 44th Attorney General of Alabama, and before that, he was the U.S. attorney appointed by Reagan from Alabama. So everything's cool, you know. Alabama, they've never had any problems with racism or any problems with law enforcement there or going up the federal government. So obviously I'm referring to all the civil rights issues that continue to rage on in Alabama, but they have a very dark history. They've never, since the civil rights movement, really gotten back on their feet with having any progressive voices in Alabama. So it's the deepest red of the red down there. But we do know that Jeff Sessions is a racist. He's xenophobic. He was denied a federal judgeship 30 years ago because he was too racist, and the ACLU is going to testify today. I'm actually not sure if they have yet already. So we know these things. I'm saying this unequivocally. Jeff Sessions is a racist, and that's the reality of the situation. I think he's still going to get confirmed, despite the grandstanding that's about to take place by the Democrats. Grandstanding is maybe too harsh of a word for, I think, the congressional members who are testifying. John Lewis, despite the fact that he's disappointed progressives in recent years, is a civil rights leader and has the absolute right to testify against Jeff Sessions. One of the most famous images of John Lewis is his head getting beaten in on a bridge in Selma. So he has absolutely the right to testify against Jeff Sessions, and he has, and John Lewis has been in Congress for decades. So, but I'm perplexed by Cory Booker. I will get to that in a little bit. But we know, again, Jeff Sessions is a racist. But I wanted to follow the money, because that's a little more interesting to me, and that's kind of what TYT is about. That's how you get the full stories, you follow the money. The top two industries that have donated to Jeff Sessions are defense aerospace and oil and gas. So, defense aerospace, meaning defense contractors, people that want to sell their equipment to the government so that we can go to war. It's what defined the Bush presidency and the Dick Cheney presidency, I should say. But what defined Dick Cheney and what defined everything that was going on in the Iraq War. Fortunately, as Attorney General, I don't see defense being the primary issue that he's going to be obviously influencing, but could he put forward domestic policy that could influence stuff that Trump wants to do internationally? Although Trump has advocated for a non-interventionist foreign policy, you never know with him. So Jeff Sessions being pro-defense is a little bit concerning. What is way more concerning to me are the oil and gas connections. So this is an article from the Washington Post, which talked about how Jeff Sessions has failed to disclose his oil interests to Congress. So this is a theme of the Trump picks. They just won't disclose. They refuse to. Trump is the first presidential candidate in decades to not release his tax returns. Rules don't apply to them, but I will read from the Washington Post. Attorney General nominee Jeff Sessions did not disclose his ownership of oil interests on land in Alabama as required by federal ethics rules, according to an examination of state records and independent ethics lawyers who reviewed these documents. The Alabama records show that Sessions owns subsurface rights to oil and other minerals on more than 600 acres in his home state, some of which are adjacent to federal wildlife preserve. The holdings are small, producing revenue in the range of $4,700 annually, but the interests were not disclosed on forms sent by Sessions to the Office of Government Ethics, which reviewed the assets of the cabinet nominees for potential conflicts of interest. I wonder why he didn't disclose those federal the fact that he has holdings right next to federal wildlife preserves. And in the current position that he's vying to be in, could he have any influence over those holdings and over the fact that Donald Trump has said that we should be using federal land to mine for oil and to use our natural resources more effectively to create domestic oil, which is, by the way, a misnomer that is sent out as a talking point by the oil and gas industry. These are multinational corporations. There's no such thing as keeping the oil within the United States. These corporations are not bound by borders, as we know from the TPP and from all these massive trade agreements. They will sell in international markets, so let's do away with this fiction, Marco Rubio would say, that the oil companies have a special place in their heart for the United States just because the oil is mined in the United States. I am troubled by the omission, said Senator Richard Blumenthal, a member of the Judiciary Committee. But this is particularly troubling because this ownership interest involves oil and gas holdings connected to a wildlife refuge. As Attorney General, Sessions would have a role in determining policy for the Department's Environmental and Natural Resources Division, which has more than 400 lawyers responsible for enforcing pollution and other laws. So, our country's gonna burn up, and the world's gonna burn up. Oy, oy, oy. So, that is incredibly concerning. Ethics through the roof, ethics implications through the roof. But I also want to dive into some of his other donors because I do think it tells a more complete story that you're not really going to get in other progressive and mainstream outlets. So his top 10 contributors by campaign committee and leadership PAC in his last run for Senate are as follows. Southern Co., which is a telecommunications company, is his number 1. Next is Batch and Bingham, which is a law firm. Next is Drummond and Co., which is a coal and mining organization. Next is Lockheed and Martin, which is a defense firm. Then WPP Group, which is plastics connections to oil and gas, obviously. 6, American Bankers Association, AT&T, FedEx, Herbert Management, which is an investment firm, and Koch Industries to round out the top 10. Koch Industries, obviously, very invested in oil and gas, to say the least. So what does the money say for Jeff Sessions? I think it paints an actually interesting picture that you guys might be surprised to hear. So one, I think it says 2 things. One, the biggest red flag is the oil and gas and the corruption. I think Jeff Sessions is going to gut any regulation that has to do with oil and gas. 1, to help his donors, 2, to personally enrich his own pockets because he's not disclosing these holdings, and thirdly, because, and I will get to, he's an ideologue. So this isn't a lot of money. Jeff Sessions, in this little amount of time, in this one Senate race, really didn't raise much money. By comparison, Cory Booker, who I will get to later, he raised $19.8 million in 3 years. Yes, I know he's in the New York area, he's from Jersey, getting all that Wall Street money, but Jeff Sessions has raised $18 million in his entire career since 1995. So, part of that has to do with the fact that Jeff Sessions is in a non-competitive state, so there are no Democratic challengers in Alabama. It's a very deep red state. So he doesn't have to worry about a Democratic challenger, so he doesn't need to take these corruptive money. But is that better? For me, it's not, because his stances are just as bad. So what that means to me is that he's an ideologue. He believes these things. He believes these kooky things about Muslims, about black people. The big thing that did him in, why he wasn't able to get this confirmation 30 years ago, was because they were able to basically raise enough red flags. He made a joke about how the Ku Klux, he would be against the Ku Klux Klan if they smoked marijuana, and then didn't really deny it in those hearings. Did that as a joke, at least. So the guy's racist, and it's pretty obvious, if not by his policy, by his words, and the fact that he wasn't able to get this confirmation. So he really believes the racist stuff. I don't think that that's crazy to say. But I also think that he really believes in this deregulatory policy. If he's still backing all of these financial interests, if he's still backing all of this Ayn Randian philosophy when he's not really getting paid that much to do so by comparison to the corporate Democrats? What's the point? The point is he actually believes it. And that means he's kind of a nut job. If you still believe this corporate influence, and you still believe in this Randian philosophy when you're not getting paid to do it, like, for example, Paul Ryan says I want to name my kid after Ayn Rand. I worship a shrine of Ayn Rand every day. I bow down to her. But his corporate donors back that up. We have no idea if that's actually true. Jeff Sessions doesn't have any financial reason to back these philosophies, except for the fact that he may actually believe in them.